Jocelyn Breckenridge surveyed her appearance in the mirror. Nervous even though no one would see her. Except Dash. She knew without confirming that he'd be here. Just as he'd been here on this day for the previous 2 years. Waiting to take her to the cemetery to visit and put fresh flowers on her husband's grave. The flowers were on the counter beside her. Just waiting for her to pick up and carry out of the house. But she hesitated, because this year was different. She was apprehensive and yet resolved. She had to move on with her life. She had to let go. It hurt. And yet at the same time, it brought her a measure of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It was time. All she had left to do was visit Carson's grave and make peace with her decision. She smoothed her shirt and ran her hands down the legs of her jeans. Not what she normally wore to the cemetery on the anniversary of her husband's burial. In the last 2 years, she'd worn black. It hadn't seemed respectful to go casual, as if the visit wasn't that important. But she also knew that Carson wouldn't want her to live like this. He'd want her to be happy. And it wouldn't have made him happy to know she still mourned him so deeply. With a sigh, she applied a light gloss to her lips and quickly fastened her long hair into a ponytail, leaving part of it loose in a messy bun. This was the real Joss. Not fussy. More comfortable in jeans and a casual shirt than the expensive dresses and jewelry her husband had loved to spoil her with. Only underneath her clothing did she wear the sexy lingerie her husband had so loved to see her in. She closed her eyes, refusing to look back, to remember how it felt when he touched her. How his hands moved over her body, knowing it better than she knew it herself. He knew exactly how to please her, how to touch her, kiss her, make love to her. He'd given her everything she could have ever wanted. His love. His respect. Everything but the one thing she needed most. And it was something she could have never asked him for. She'd loved him too much to ever demand of him something he couldn't give her. She shook away the heavy veil of sadness, determined to get through the day and on with her life. Her new life. She picked up the flowers. Her favorite, and brought them to her nose, closing her eyes as she inhaled. They were what Carson always gave her. Every birthday. Every anniversary. Or any time just because. Today she'd place them on his grave and walk away. This time for good. She didn't need to see the cold slab of marble that marked his life and death. To remind her of her husband. That wasn't the way she wanted to remember him. She was through torturing herself by standing over his grave, missing him with her every breath. He'd live in her heart and soul always. That was where she'd visit him in the future. Not on the grassy knoll that covered the casket underneath.